Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are going to start in exactly 1 minute. Thank you for your patience. Well, good morning. We're going to get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I know we have people joining us from all over. I hope you're well and staying safe. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by Cigniti on staying ahead of your customer's experience in the age of 5G. I'm your host and moderator, Chris Manuel, part of Cigniti's digital organization. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items, if you don't mind. So we're currently in listen-only mode. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, send us a chat in the webinar console. We'll be having Q&A at the end of the session as time allows, so please use the chat feature to submit your questions to the panel. We hope to get some good questions. We've got a great panel lined up. We'll do our best to answer all the questions today. If we don't get to them, we'll apply via email within 24 hours. Today's presentation will be recorded and will be made available for future playback. And lastly, we'd love to hear from you on social, so feel free to tweet us at Cigniti. So we have an exciting topic for you today. We could not have a more esteemed panel of experts, so let's get started by meeting them. Rashmi Varma, she's the founder and CTO at Innovate 5G. Rashmi brings valuable insights from her combined experiences as a former product lead in global organizations to her current role at Innovate 5G, a leader in 5G application testing over live networks using an innovative test platform. Ramna Kemo, EVP Chief Information and People Officer at Mavenir. He's a well-respected leader in this market segment. Mavenir is if you don't know, is a leading 5G Open RAN player that is building the future of networks and pioneering advanced technology, focusing on the vision of a single software-based automated network that runs on any cloud. Mavenir's focus on transforming the way the world connects, accelerating software network transformation for over 250 communication service providers in over 120 countries, which serves more than 50% of the world's subscribers. Mark Shirax is a strategic partner with Schooling Mitchell, providing business advisory and outsourced vendor management services to organizations of all sizes. He has an extensive background leading DevOps and Agile transformation and global quality teams at two of the largest telecommunication firms in Canada, some of the largest Canadian financial institutions, and global professional service organizations. And last but not least, Pradeep Govaswamy, President CTO for Cigniti North America. He's an industry thought leader in software testing with over 2 decades of experience. Pradeep has expertise in setting up test centers of excellence around test management, automation, mobility, SOA, and functional testing. He's an award-winning CTO of Texas. Congratulations, Pradeep, and also a top 100 best CIO of Pan India. So welcome to you all, and thank you for making the time to join us. Let me just set some quick context before we get into the discussion. So, we certainly live in unprecedented times, and unless you've lived under a rock for the past 18 months, this is the obvious statement of the year. Pre-COVID organizations were already under immense pressure to transform, and a fundamental component of this transformation was focused on the customer experience. The new world in which we live now has simply magnified this necessity and compounded the urgency to not just accelerate digital transformation, but along with that, I don't think the lights have ever been shining brighter on than nations either are or need to be looking at the totality of digital assurance and the new imperative of better factoring for the customer experience in their digital assurance strategy execution. So with that, let's get into the discussion. Pradeep, you get the honor of being put on the hot seat first. So Pradeep, you have the benefit of getting a front row seat essentially to how organizations across industry sectors are dealing with the current business climate. Can you talk about some of the back pressures that organizations are facing to not just really, the back pressures they're facing to accelerate their digital transformation? How is that translating in what we can call the new imperative for digital assurance?
Absolutely, Chris. And thanks to be in this great panel list, actually. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We are seeing in the last 18 months, digital transformation has become the #1 priority for many of our clients. What it used to be, digital transformation for tech world or retail world, it has now become the buzzword for every industry, right from manufacturing, retailers, healthcare, and life sciences. Everyone is embarking their true investment on digital transformation, and most importantly, on the customer experience side of it. So they are now reaching out directly to their consumers. What it used to be, hey, I'm going to get the feedback in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Today, they are getting every feedback on a hourly basis with multiple social media channels, with multiple customer sentiment across all those. Digital transformation has become the key for them to increase their experience out of it, and therefore their bottom line, consumers and experience and their sales is are also going up actually. So that's the key here. And every consumer is also looking for their immediate implementation of their request actually. So that's what what we mean by consumer experience. And the lot of transformations are also happening in that. What it used to be 20% digital transformation budget for any IT organization, rest of it is for legacy, rest of it is for transformation of their application. Today it's about 60% of IT budgets are being spent for digital transformation. We used to have chief digital officers, less than 20% of the Fortune 500 companies. And today it's about 60% of the Fortune 500 companies have a role called chief digital and transformation officer. All of them are now allocating their budgets for our IT, right? And the budgets are not coming from the CIOs. The budgets are coming from chief marketing officer, chief experience officer, chief digital and transformation officers around it. I know these are some of the imperatives that I've seen in the last 18 months as an organization. And we are seeing a lot of.
Yeah, thanks, Pradeep. Listening to you answer that, it makes my head spin. But I can imagine the organizations out there that are, they were already running at full speed and juggling so many things. It's just kind of continuing to compound. So I think it brings more relevance certainly to the discussion. So Mark, let me bring you in and kind of further that point. So you've been doing this for a while. You've seen the evolution of digital. How are you seeing organizations evolve and mature their digital assurance programs to try, hear what Pradeep said, a lot of organizations just trying to keep up, or, how are you seeing them trying to keep up? What is, rapidly changing is an understatement, and increasing expectations of their customer base. I mean, you've got these, these forces that are coming together that are presenting real challenges for organizations.
Yeah, no, I have been doing it for a while with the gray hair to prove it. I think many organizations have started to evolve from being reactive to being more proactive with the concept of customer and user experience. I think traditionally testing has been really focused on pure functionality. And then we started to look a little at performance, at response times, but it was always a secondary consideration. I think now we're starting to get it. It's about more than just does it work or not. But there's some real challenges with getting the right feedback at the right stage of the development lifecycle. We're starting to see organizations pursue a number of different strategies. We see them trying alpha and beta testing, crowdsourced testing, pre-releasing to friends and family, all in the pursuit of getting real customer and user experience data as early as possible. But the environment's also much more complex. As networks and applications become more sophisticated and integrated, as our capabilities are increasing, the user is expecting much more than just does this page render properly. We expect our applications and our devices to perform auto-magically. And if it doesn't happen, we hit delete, and all of a sudden the App Store is filled with 1-star reviews and our brand's taking a hit on social.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, and that's part of what loyalty seems to be out the window. So Rashmi, lots of moving parts. If I take what Pradeep and Mark said, lots of moving parts, and when you consider the need to address the application and the network and the user experience, and obviously they're all related, but curious how you see the network component becoming more intertwined with these other elements.
That's a very good question, Chris. As Pradeep and Mark said, experience is the relevant metrics of our times. Specifically right now, and when we live in a hyper-personalization era, where everything is personalized around what you browse, what you watch, what you purchase. We've seen, applications working on that personalization angle quite a bit. Obviously, now they're trying to take personalization to another level, which is autonomous. You want the world around you to be autonomous, to be able to guess at, what is it that what is going. It's like more being more predictive. So when we talk about personalization, I think we are moving into we were always in the predictive mode, but now with autonomous, we are actually taking it to another level. Now, the applications were able to achieve some amount of personalization. However, our networks were mainly being used as a delivery mechanism, like as an application agnostic pipeline, so to speak. But now, if you look at it with the advent of 5G, our networks are becoming application aware, because 5G is actually a technology. The fifth generation of wireless technology is here, and the networks are becoming virtualized. The networks are becoming programmable, and it's a very high advanced technology that is available to us now in terms of 5G. Even at 4G LTE, when it came around, it did spur a lot of applications, such as, I would say the entire sharing economy. The shared economy came about because of 4G LTE. The likes of Uber, Airbnb, all your delivery apps that were possible because of what the network was able to provide. Now 5G is taking it many steps ahead and is becoming the network itself can be personalized. So it's not just your application. Now that the network can be personalized, the application and the network have to go hand in hand, where the application can now request certain features of the network to know, to basically use an SLA from the network. So the applications need to be aware of what their vitals are in terms of what do they need from the network, what are their needs in terms of bandwidth, speed, latency from the network. And then the network has to react to that information and allocate the resources.
Perfect. I want to just ask a quick follow-up, Rashmi. That was excellent. I like how you said that I think, and I've heard you say this before, is that the network's becoming more application aware. The application is going to become more knowledgeable of the network. What is that? What would you think that means for the developer? That the whole concept before, again, not that they were unaware of it, but it seems since with this kind of it being intertwined, what do you think that means for the everyday developer as they're thinking about 5G?
Yes, so I think very recently, I think Apple announced and they asked all the application developers to optimize their apps for 5G. And what they're actually asking them is to get off the Wi-Fi networks that they usually test these applications on, but use a 5G network that has very significant differences in the parameters that it provides. Not just that, I think the 5G network now with its network slicing, network slice is obviously a technical term that I'm using here, but for the first time, the 3GPP standards and networks has defined a metric called QoE, which is quality of experience. So obviously with the comments that Mark and Pradeep made, experience is kind of center stage, and now we also have a technical metric that allows us to measure what the QoE is. In terms of that interaction of the application with the network, the application needs to understand what are its own needs, how much bandwidth it's going to consume. Obviously, they have to find that out. It's kind of a go out, test your application, see if the application, the network meets your application requirements. So far, we would launch our applications in the market and see what happens, which was the result of those 1 star, 2 stars that, when consumers were not getting the experience, they could not differentiate if the experience was because of the lack of a network connectivity or the capability, or was it the lack of the application side of experience. But now, applications can actually make an end-to-end experience objective on this. In fact, it's not just the application experience; it's an end-to-end. It's the end-to-end experience. So, in order to do that, we recommend, and that's what Innovate 5G does, is we provide our test platforms for applications to come in and perform testing on a live 5G network. look at what's consumed, what is its interaction.
Let's continue with that same train of thought. Based on what we heard Rashmi say, what do you think are some of the customer experience dimensions that will be expected with 5G or even with Wi-Fi 6?
Thanks, Chris. So I think we are dealing with a very well-educated customer base. I mean, no different from, nowadays, when you're a doctor and a patient shows up and they've read all about their disease, for 300 days on Google before they show up, right? So we are dealing with a very educated customer. 5G, Wi-Fi 6, all of these technologies have been well documented, well hyped. And so as a result, everybody knows that with 5G, you'll have an incredible experience. So what used to be a good experience now needs to transition into an incredible experience, because everyone's expecting a very low latency network, massive amounts of bandwidth, very high speeds, great throughput, excellent reliability, and coverage everywhere. Nationwide is just maybe a lightweight term now. So expect people to want more, come in to use your applications or digital assets with this whole incredible experience in mind. And I think we'll also see this notion of endless video. And in the case of, sorry about this, got an emergency alert. So this whole notion of endless video will show up, right? Today, we balance how we consume video based on our network environment. If you're not in ideal settings, we only concentrate on short form. Tomorrow, when we have 5G, when we have Wi-Fi 6, you can transition to live. You can transition to long form. Everything can be high def, everything can be 4K, and you will start to make choices whether you have cable at home, whether you have 5G service at home. So this whole notion of endless video will surround us, and the multimedia experience will truly be in our hands. And then obviously smart IoT. Think about it, right? Now you have devices that are constrained with how much data they're allowed to send up to the network or send between them. But once you have 5G or you have Wi-Fi 6, these devices can talk to each other, send all the required data up and down. VR environment. Today, we only do VR when we have the ideal settings in our home, right next to the router, and we are all very happy with our VR glasses. That has to change and will change. And I'll just build on what was said, right? If I can, let's take this example. If I can go to the George Bush Library in Dallas, and I buy my ticket, and as I buy my ticket, instead of buying those 1920s headphones, I buy, for a little bit extra money, this VR experience. As soon as I pick up the VR glasses, a network slice is created through the network. It's orchestrated. And I have the SLAs that Rashmi was talking about. And now I can tour the entire library with augmented reality, with an audio overlay, with a video overlay, with statistics, with extra references that make my experience phenomenal. And I paid for it. It gets billed from the service provider of that 5G network all the way to my monthly bill. I didn't have to think about it, much like the tolls, right? Yep. You just drive through the toll lane and you get your bill. So all of this is going to happen. And if you're a CMO, if you're a CDO, if you're a CIO, you need to start thinking about how is my application going to be performing as well as be measured in this environment. And that gives rise to this real notion of AI, ML, big data. We'll have tons of data. So people will expect their QoE to be measured. You'll have to prove to your customers that if you're charging them a little bit extra, that you're giving them a lot more, right? So I think we are in for a lot of change, but it's positive change. This is what we wanted. We complained about these things not being available. Now I think the infrastructure is catching up.
Yeah. Now the question, I guess, excellent. Thank you for that. I guess the question is, and part of the impetus today is everyone going to really be ready, right? It seems right. Everything seems out there, and it's like slowly trickling in, and it's probably more here than people realize. At least the need for being prepared. So,
and what about for the stuff that we haven't even thought about, right? It's like what Rashmi was talking about with the last generation, creating sort of new players and almost new industries, really. We can expect, I think, to see the same sorts of things.
The voice of the customer and digital assurance has never been more critical. And I want to expand the traditional definition of the voice of the customer. That's not necessarily customer sentiment anymore. I think it's the said and unsaid, right? So it could be them, as Rashmi said, going or Mark said rather, going and giving the 1 star on the App Store. But the unsaid aspect of it, I think we need to factor in is the performance of the device, or whatever, and however you want to define performance. So I think we have to look at kind of a broader definition of the voice of the customer, and it's never been more critical as we're hearing it today. So that really kind of brings to light the importance of the concept of shift right and digital experience monitoring. It's much more further magnified. Can you maybe talk about how organizations are both collecting and using data from production as part of their digital assurance strategies?
Absolutely. Actually, I think thanks to Rashmi, she made a great point about quality of experience. I think that's the metric now the clients are asking us to create. Actually, if we want to have the quality of experience, therefore our net promoter score is increased, right, for our application and for our brand as well, right? So everything is direct correlation of the quality of experience. Right. With that being said, now they are asking, how do I collect all the data? The data is now available huge in structured format, in unstructured format, in various sources. And these data are not in just in hundreds and thousands. These are like in millions across the board, whether it is B2B or B2C or direct to their customers. So all of these data are worldwide right now. So with that being said, the organizations are looking to collect all those data. Right. So, and then the terminology that we've been using, which is the customer experience sentiment analyzer. So I want to understand the customer experience, analyze their sentiment, and therefore I can correlate which market segment am I good at. Am I good at by this country or by this local region or for this particular set of network? Am I good at for my positive scenarios or my negative scenarios? What is my best of my product that's going to hit the market? What is the end customers are looking for it, right? They're not looking at the set of populations to gather the future requirement. They are looking at an artificial intelligence data, the predictive analytics into this. Now we are seeing a significant shift with the digital transformation through the shift right approach of taking the customers into your IT application lifecycle with various channels around it. So it's going to be a massive change management and also the technology transformation. A lot of tools and labs are coming up, which are completely into the cloud actually. So I'm very impressed with the way the Innovate 5G come up with the labs on demand where the customers can come and visualize their testing scenarios. The way Rashmi was talking about, hey, I don't want to just customize my app. I want to customize my network that fit into my app. And that has to be an autonomous driven actually. So these are some of those greatest concepts that are coming into the digital transformation story.
Excellent.
Pradeep, if I may chime in, if you can do all of what you described in a predictive manner before the product is out into the market, I mean, that's a big plus, right? If we can somehow figure out how to predict what our next release score is going to be, then we can prevent another, 1-star app going out, right? It'll be nice to be able to iterate and say, what does it take for my app to get to, 3.64 and above, and try to work on that before you really get out and disappoint yourselves with your customer base.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And one of the things, a lot of these case studies, I think you greatly mentioned about the library case study. Another case study is about insurance, right? The insurance app is all installed into your phone. And now it's tracking every single movement of you. I know what you are doing, how you're doing. Are you texting? Are you distracted? And I know how many times you have continued your driving without any of those distractions. And therefore, you're a better driver. So I'm going to reduce my insurance rate for you, right? So it's directly experiencing through this, apps as well. So some of these experience are directly reaching out to the consumers and bottom line, you can predict your sales, predict your revenue, predict your, what future, features that you are going to get into the system.
Yeah, excellent. I can just see the heads and the hands of everybody listening who thinks that we just got shift left down right now. You're telling us we have to do shift right. But obviously, it's becoming a much more dynamic aspect of assurance. It's no longer a static act. Talking about the importance of shift right, being more predictive and analytical with production data, customer sentiment. How do you see this further enhancing and enabling testing activities?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, I firmly believe in the concept of, test early and often, shift as far left as possible, and the cost of quality, as we all know, increases exponentially as you move along the SDLC. And so, I have to admit, the term shift right initially threw me off. It seemed to be a little aggressive, honestly. It felt like it was going against what I believed in. But then I realized what it was actually telling me, that it was actually about enhancing that feedback loop back to dev test, back to the earlier phases of the SDLC. Really, it's still about shift left, I think. And if we can get better data back to that design and development and early testing, then we can actually build to user expectations, build to customer sentiment.
Right. So, okay. So let me follow up on that. So you mentioned kind of better data. What do you see around kind of the changing around the metrics that that need to be collected? What's valuable? And I guess the second part of that is are organizations prepared today to capture them and make meaningful use of them? Everyone is already inundated with data. How do you see that metrics changing? And then organizations, the preparedness of them to be able to make meaningful use of them within the development lifecycle. Right.
So, this immediate feedback loop that we've been talking about is kind of always been one of those promises of Agile and DevOps. But I think we're struggling to figure out, what are the right indicators? What are the right metrics to let us know that we have it right or not? I think there's data, there's information. As Pradeep talked about, the volume of information that's out there that's available, but what is it telling us, and how do we get it to the right people? And really, more importantly, what are we going to do about it? I think we need to do a better job of correlating a bunch of technical metrics with customer sentiment and translating that to things like propensity to buy, propensity to recommend. And
those traditional technical metrics, I mean, it's a whole new realm of metrics and the incorporation of those, right? So it'll be
and I think that's the challenge that we've got ahead of us is so we've got this kind of massive buffet of information that's available to us. What do we do? How do we get the right pieces out of that, and how do we make it meaningful? And I think that's the hard part. I think as we've every sort of step we take in technology, it feels like we get more and more data, more and more information. But if we can't make it be meaningful, then we're no further ahead at the end of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's almost becoming a mandate, right? I mean, the speed at which that you need to move, or an organization needs to move, it's going to be predicated on being able to not just get the data, but to actually put it to meaningful use.
Right.
So perfect. Thanks for that. So Rashmi, I mentioned before, there's a lot of moving parts here. We're 4 or 5 questions in, and my head is spinning because there are a lot of moving parts here. And when we think of the constructs of 5G, for example, you mentioned it's no longer just about speed and bandwidth. It's also a function of the experience. So, the core of our topic today is, digital assurance and digital experience monitoring as part of that. How do you see 5G increasing the necessity of capturing, what I'll call the totality of the digital experience of the customer?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Mark, again. I just wanted to chime in a little bit on the comment that Ramnik made about, the business outcomes, the business. Much of this digital assurance is actually I don't necessarily, there's shift left and now there's shift right, but I think where we are standing really is at the cross section where we could look at both left and right, but that's where, we are positioned with our platform is to provide that last stop before we actually go out into the market is, run it on a live 5G network, get that experience, understand what that experience actually looks like. We are almost kind of trying to take this to a predictive mode where we can tell you what your business success is going to be, right? That's what we all saying is that before your application goes out the door, You have some predictive metrics at that point to know what is the business success, what is the ROI that you're going to see from it. You would know it even just when all the subscribers are, most people that are subscribing, that are actually navigating the internet, browsing the internet, are on the wireless devices. So we are starting off all the way from the radio access network side, coming into the wireless core network that's offering a network slicing now. But even on the radio access, and I'm sure Mavenir can speak better to this, with the advent of virtual RAN, the advent of Open RAN, there are concepts that are built into Open RAN now that talk about bringing enrichment data in, right? So we're talking about the application interacting with the network. The application is personalized now, the network is personalized. So the application interacting with the network, but again, it can go all the way back. So it's actually a circular, it's becoming closed loop feedback, where now the network is receiving enrichment data from the applications itself to understand, what kind of resources the network can put forward for an optimal experience. For instance, if you are at an event in maybe Vegas, maybe it's a concert or a music event, and that there's a lot of, we hope that those events will actually come back now, that we are post-COVID. But the radio access network now has the capability to understand that there is an event, and this enrichment data could come through Eventbrite. It could come through some of the event management platforms, and understand what would be the traffic in that area. Take that enrichment data and basically allocate your radio resources towards a specific region. So that's basically personalization on the radio side of things. And similarly, the slicing so we refer to that as RAN slicing, the radio access network slicing, and then the core slicing, then that basically goes hand in hand with end-to-end network personalization. In the end, what is the application's experience given that kind of a network, where the network actually reorients and reconstructs itself around the needs of the community, around, where is the traffic, where is the bandwidth required. So yes, it does go beyond, and we do have massive bandwidth available, low latencies available, throughput. You could look at a whole bunch of metrics there, but in the end, it's about, how is the network reorienting itself around the needs of the application, and on the other side, how the applications are utilizing the resources available in a 5G network. So, looking at it from both angles and being resources in the network, what is the application of tomorrow, right? Yep. We know there's a lot of parallel activities going on. We're trying to make transportation faster, like the Hyperloop. Today our network, if somebody's riding a Hyperloop, our network wouldn't be able to keep up with that, just because of the speed at which the Hyperloop pod is moving. But how would you reorient your network to be able to cater to video demands coming from, people riding the Hyperloop pod, for instance? So that's basically where, now that we know that there are these resources available, of course, we are going to go with improvements on what we know today. But I think where the real ingenious is, and hence the name of a platform, where the real ingenuity is in actually imagining what the future could be like given resources like this in the network.
Excellent. Yeah, I if people's eyes weren't open before, I think they certainly are now. I think I probably asked you the wrong question. It wasn't, 5G increasing the necessity of capturing the totality of it, is understanding of the totality of the digital experience that's going to have to be captured. It's just so expansive over what we're used to and consider today. So thank you for that. We're almost on time. We've got a time for a couple more questions. Ramnik, I know it's still early days with regard to 5G. I think for the folks that are in the industry, I don't know that it's as early as at least at the enterprise level that the general population thinks. But what are people in the industry doing to improve the 5G customer experience?
The list is actually quite long, but I'll give you some highlights, Chris. First of all, I think both in private and public settings, right? You can do a private network or you can do a public network. I think the key is here being aware and starting to plan, because you may not have to do a wholesale change out. I mean, depending upon who you are, if you're a service provider, you're already making those bets. You're already discussing what technologies to put in. You're already doing your trials. You're already doing field rollouts. And there's a whole list of people, who are pioneers and are leading the way. But then you may be just simply planning, your next release of your product, your application or your software product or your digital asset. You need to be keenly aware of what is out there, right? So you need to plan now. You need to be aware of these trends. And you need to start mapping out your ecosystem. And I think this repeatedly happens, whether you're a service provider or an enterprise. You need to start understanding where you are going to be playing in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. For example, you'll have new handsets in the market. You'll have new chipsets. Don't be constrained now about things that you were constrained with before. You made certain assumptions in designing your product and service about the network. Those assumptions have to change. You have to think bigger pipes, low latency, more throughput. What can you do in that environment? And really, what is that ecosystem that you'll have to partner with from a product side, a software stack side, a test and assurance side, so that you can be successful in what you're planning to do. And then you need to choose a technology that will drive down the cost of implementation. So I'll just talk about Open RAN for 2 seconds, right? And this is why, at least in our case, we are such big proponents of Open RAN. We've found that, and we're not trying to do something brand new. It's essentially the same radio technology. We're just trying to make it, the interface is open. And every time you make things open, more people can participate, and you can bring COTS or common off-the-shelf hardware to the center of the stage, and that drives the cost down of implementation. You can tune your networks to run when needed, so you're not burning energy all the time. So all of these values lead to a massive TCO improvement for the service provider. And the same concept can be, baked into your thinking when you're designing your products. What happens when you're in a reservation scenario, right? Like in the sense your resources are being tuned up and down in the core. How will your application react to that? Do you start tuning your experience based on what size pipe is available, what SLA is available, how many compute cycles you have available to do your transaction? So you have to think about that, choose the right technology, and then the right assurance strategy, both commercial as well as technical. We've always tested the technical side, right? Can I run? But now you have to think about, okay, QoE, as we all spoke about, right? If somebody's paying more, how do I prove before someone asks me that my application is giving you that money's worth? And lastly, this is paramount, especially because 5G will come, 4G will still be here. There'll be a period of overlap. Please test out scenario where your customers are going to be, that your application or your digital asset is performing to its best. So those are my points of coaching on this.
Excellent, Ramnik. I'm sure everyone was fiercely scribbling that down. If that was the short list, I would hate to see the long list. You've got a blog series there in the making.
And you know what? I think that I think the last point you made is a really critical one, right? Because when we're talking about these new technologies, we're always sort of planning to take advantage of the new technology, but you made an absolutely critical point, which is that the old technology doesn't suddenly disappear. We need to be able to live in a world that has, both technologies or 2, 3, whatever levels of technologies actually alive. So that's really.
We've been asked to, for example, make sure that we have 2G, 3G, 4G also available, because some of these things, those that hadn't even done the 4G leap in developing markets now want to just jump forward to 5G, but they still have 3G. So how can you launch a service without being conscious of what's out there?
Exactly. Yeah. Great point.
Excellent points. Well, listen, I hate to cut this short. I wish we had another hour. I didn't get through even close to all my questions. Fantastic dialogue. Stay tuned. We may have to hold a part 2. I'll let you all take a break, and before we get into our Q&A, and if for everyone in the audience, please go ahead and continue to submit your questions. We've obviously talked a lot about the customer experience, and specifically in the context of understanding its changing dimensions in the coming years. If that wasn't apparent before, it should be very apparent now. But in the spirit of our discussion today is that we really need to get in for, what I take away from it is we need to get in front of the customer experience and, ideally know before they know, right? And that's the goal here, whether that be pre-production or post-production. So with that, Cigniti is, we're excited to announce the latest evolution of our digital experience monitoring solution with the release of Insight. Insight expands upon post-experience analysis, bringing leading and live indicators through both AI and real-time monitoring. We want to take just a few minutes to introduce Insight with 2 short videos. I promise they're short, and then we're going to get right into the Q&A. So if you could just bear with us and hopefully enjoy the videos.
For an enterprise to succeed in the digital era, it's all about customer experience. In today's world, with billions of connected devices, rapid adoption of IoT, and lightning-fast speeds, your customers imagine how your customers' experiences and enterprise could evolve. This is possible today. Introducing Insight. Insight is Cigniti's AI-powered and SaaSified platform that helps you connect data sources, collect real-time data, monitor and alert against issues, correlate using pre, post, and live indicators, correct issues preemptively to calibrate experiences in the age of 5G. Insight enables enterprises by going beyond pre- and post-experience data to provide real-time visibility and predictability of customer experiences to assure business outcomes. Find out how you can stay a step ahead of what your customers want in the age of 5G. Get started with a demo of Insight.
So sorry about that. I know we had some audio problems there. My apologies. But hopefully you got a little bit from it. When we've talked a lot about digital assurance and doing it right, it ensures the speed and quality have become really as Pradeep said, the imperative of any digital transformation. But I think we need to look at digital assurance differently. And this was brought out, I think, by everybody. It's not a static activity. It doesn't stop with the release of the app. It's almost as if we change our mentality once the app has been released, and we go from being proactive with driving quality early, like Mark talked about, to being reactive, active, and really anxiously waiting for production defects. If there's no defects, we declare it a success, and we'll most likely start immediately worrying about everything we need to do for the next release. So, with digital assurance, it needs to be an ongoing activity that has to incorporate, as you heard from the panel, the performance, the feedback, all the different insights that can be gained from the living app in order to, anticipate potential issues, but really also establish that real-time feedback loop, right? And I think if you think of it as it's no longer linear. It's definitely the feedback loop, whether that be to the marketing team or the product team or dev teams, so they can be factored into future releases. Last video, we're going to take a quick look at the features that Insight provides, and then we're going to move right into the Q&A.
Let's say you've launched a new version of your app. However, you know that the current feedback system is discrete and delayed, so you lose the opportunity to understand the impact of the change. With Insight's live monitoring capability across layers, you can closely analyze user experience metrics. You can also draw inferences or find any anomalies in the live data. With the help of deep learning models, Insight will analyze and enable you to predict how the user will rate and review your app on the App Store, Play Store, or social media. Insight can also provide the composite user experience score at an application level based on various KPIs and metrics across users and devices. Its diagnostic capabilities help product owners and app developers identify the root cause of user experience issues. Let's look at another real-world scenario. You've rolled out an enhancement and want to know how your users are reacting to the change. You've observed increased conversations, but the sentiment score is low and trending downwards. Insight helps you by analyzing historical data and identifying the users and aspects of the app, such as usability, functionality, performance, etc., contributing to the low sentiment score. With Insight, you will not only be able to proactively monitor and manage user experience, but also help improve brand perception and engagement.
Okay. Hopefully that was some of value today to you. You know, I think in today's age, you know, customer experience being everything, you know, with Insight, you know, it puts you in the position of knowing before they know, which is where you're going to keep hearing. And so you can react and respond, I think, not just at the speed of your business, but at the speed of your customers' expectations, which has been abundantly clear there. So if anyone's interested in going through our discovery workshop, please do contact us. We'd be happy to demonstrate how Insight can be incorporated into your digital assurance strategy. With that being said, I'd like to bring back our panel onto video. We've got a lot of great questions here that I'm going to try to usher us through. So the first one is and I'll direct this to so I think Ramnik and Rashmi, this kind of would fall into your category. So I really like this question. You know, when should product teams and developers start building with 5G in mind? Is this driven by the business and marketing predicating it, or is this something that dev teams need to start kind of taking the bull by the horns and doing themselves?
Rashmi, you want to take a crack at it, or go ahead?
Yes, our suggestion would be that you understand what that 5G stack looks like and how the application could interact with the 5G stack. So yes, so this should be part of the product development. In fact, your product owners, when they're designing your the product or the application, you know, this should be actually a feedback into that process where it's being dealt with right at the beginning when they're shaping how the product or the application would eventually work.
Just to add to that, right? Just like we've mentally conditioned ourselves in the development world to keep looking out for new Apple releases and new Android releases, you know, we are used to it. Likewise, if you were on the core space and you did a lot of development, you kept the Intel TikTok in mind, or the AMD product roadmap, and so on and so forth, ARM roadmap. This is like that. You have to keep 5G in mind, and you need to be aware of it. So I don't think it's something that you can do a year from now. You have to start building it in now. And if you're developing a service, if you're a CMO developing a service, write your 5G test cases now, and then write your service. I think it should be the other way around. We need to be prepared for this, right? Because this is only a matter of time. You know, we are in the middle of rollouts. You won't name names, but service providers are already rolling this out. And pretty soon you'll have not only macro coverage, as we call it, but you'll have millimeter wave coverage with 5G. And this is not a may happen trend. It's happening. People are investing real money in it.
Yeah.
So, you know, as an extension to that question, I know the audience is more interested in how do they develop for 5G, but much of our traffic, Ramnik pointed out, when you have a new device that has come into the market, even the device ecosystem is developing as we speak. And when you talk about devices, not just your phones, you know, it's your Internet of Things, your sensors, you know, any electronic medium that's going to connect to the network. In fact, what we know is that in the next 5 years, we're going to have 1.9 billion subscribers on the network, which is what we know of today as the users of the network. But what is interesting to note is that we are going to have 4.1 billion Internet of Things devices that is going to far exceed the number of subscribers in the network. At least on the Insight, you know, you can get subscriber feedback, but how do you get feedback from Internet of Things to understand whether things are working correctly or not? because much of those applications, and that's another thing we haven't necessarily talked about, and I think we need a part 2 to this. Much of those applications actually will be running on the edge, not necessarily on your devices. So the edge is another movement, it's a big shift in how the network is configured when we talk about edge computing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can just extend that to RPA as well, right? I mean, it's the same notion. The sensors, the robots, everyone, you need to think about being 5G aware.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, very good. We're probably going to have to go into the questions are fantastic. We're definitely not going to be able to get to them all. Maybe they'll be the basis for our part 2. The answers have been fantastic. I would be remiss if we didn't mention security. We're with every single day we're hearing about new security breaches and hacks. So we had a great question. While 5G is reality now, how will 5G affect online security?
I don't think there is a difference. If anything, I made this point earlier with Open RAN especially, right? You are bringing what has been really hardened in the IT space, because all our apps are running on IT infrastructure, right, today. We bring all of those values back to the larger network, all the way to the edge. We are not reinventing things. We are actually letting the ecosystem that has been hardened over time, make the economics better. So there's no yes, there are including 5G. In fact, I think there are more tools now available, because we are pulling the whole industry that is used to developing and producing software into the mix, and as a result, we get more security.
The only thing I might add to that, though, is while it's certainly logical that we've sort of been there, done that, and we're bringing all that to the table, I think the fact that we're seeing potentially more devices, so it's not necessarily because of 5G, but it's sort of the secondary effect of having more IoT type devices, more of those sorts of things on networks that maybe weren't there before. And so it's not that it creates more security issues. I just think it creates a requirement for more awareness around it and being much more intentional about how we implement security. I think in a lot of those environments, I think that's maybe the only.
Very good point, Mark. I think we have to worry about how does your security practice change with scale, because to the earlier point, it's a 1:4 ratio, handsets to IoT devices.
Right.
So I'd just like to quickly add here, as Ramnik said, much of the applications running on an IT infrastructure, the security was something that was referred to as over the top. I mean, you'd have to have a separate security offering or a separate security team that would actually come in and integrate security into those environments. Whereas 5G itself, the 3GPP, the security is built into that technology. It has always been built into the technology from the very beginning of 3G, 4G, and then come into 5G, it's actually more secure. Because if you look at the 3GPP specification body that's dictating the 5G technology, there is a special, they're addressing security as actually something that's integrated into the network, and it's not the onus, it's not on the onus of the application developers to actually bring that and integrate the security. It's already in the network.
Fantastic point. Well, listen, we're at the hour. I'm going to have to cut off our parting shots. We'll take that as our parting shots for panelists. You guys proved that time and time again. So thank you so much for joining us. Anyone in the audience, please reach out with any further questions. We hope to see you at another of our events soon. Good day, good evening. Stay safe and be well.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.